Good evening. Welcome to Live United. Thanks for joining us. You know, we're heading into cold weather season. I hate to acknowledge that right now, but because I don't particularly care for the cold all that much, but I know many of you out there do. But some of you may be challenged with how you take care of yourselves through those winter months in terms of keeping warm. And we are fortunate today to have with us Beth Daniels. Beth joins us from the Fuel Assistance Program at Southwestern Community Services. And really, what an amazing program both the fuel assistance and a weatherization program are for our citizens. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You know, we oftentimes don't think perhaps about other people having to really be challenged by staying warm in the winter months. And, you know, they may think, well, the homeless are taken care of by the shelters. But what they may not recognize is that some of our very own neighbors or family members or our citizens may just be under shelter, under the roof of something, but not be able to provide for the heat that they may need in those locations. So if you could tell us a little bit about the fuel assistance program first.
Sure.
Some of the history of that, and you know, what are the, you know, everybody thinks there's always a typical profile for these things, and my guess is there isn't for this.
That's true. That's true. The fuel assistance program that we operate through Southwestern Community Services covers both Cheshire and Sullivan counties. Usually in a typical fuel assistance year, we'll see somewhere around 6,000 applications for fuel assistance. Most folks we find do end up being eligible. It's an income eligibility base, and that's according to the gross income, household size, but also the home type, the fuel type. We do offer benefits for fuel types, that everything from oil, kerosene, propane, but also for those who heat with electric. Sometimes people think that if they heat with electric, then they don't qualify for fuel assistance because of the name, but they certainly might. We also cover wood and wood pellets. And we also can do heat included for those who have their heat included with their rent. We can make rental payments on their behalf through their fuel assistance benefit. Usually it can help with it. It's usually about a month or so. But the entire process, really, it starts with a phone call to our office. And with that phone call, we go ahead and set up an appointment. And that's really important, that piece of it, because what we do during that phone call is we complete an appointment checklist and mail that to the household so that they have a little time to gather what it is that they need, so that by the time they come to their appointment, they don't feel like they're starting from zero. Usually it's pretty simple. It's just whatever your income source is, we like to have documentation of that. If you rent, we want a landlord form just to verify information, that sort of thing. So it's pretty basic, but depending on how complicated your situation is, we might ask for additional paperwork, but that's okay. We do have folks who apply who are self-employed, who might have rental income. So even in cases where it gets a little more complicated, we certainly don't want anyone to think that they can't apply. We encourage anyone who's struggling, who thinks that they may possibly be eligible, to apply, because even if we cannot qualify you for fuel assistance, we oftentimes may have other programs that we might be able to help you with. So that's a really important piece, is just calling and scheduling that appointment.
Now, Beth, is this unique to the Monadnock region, or can people find these types of programs anywhere they go?
They can find these types of programs anywhere. Every state in the United States has community action agencies. And each community action agency is a little different depending on the need for that local area. It's kind of the beauty of the community action. But most have what we call kind of their base programs: fuel assistance, electric assistance, weatherization, Head Start, you know, all of those types of programs that folks usually associate with social services. So no matter what town you live in, you should be able to access a fuel assistance program to apply for help. The program opens in December. So you usually start to see our program brochures. You can see here there's a little thermostat. If you see these anywhere you go, we've really tried to saturate the area, including laundromats and child care facilities and all kinds of places. The important piece of all of it is just that folks know that they have the ability to apply, no matter where they live. And we want to make sure that they do that.
So when somebody has applied and they're receiving assistance, do they receive assistance through the winter? Is it for, maybe a month while they're getting back on their feet? How does it work?
It's a one-time benefit. So what ends up happening is we take applications through the late summer, the early fall. We want to get as many people done by the time the program opens. So right around November, we start mailing out what we call our benefit notification letters, just letting everybody know this is what you're going to receive, and it's a fixed dollar amount. So for some folks, the amount might carry them for most of the winter, and the vendors are notified as well. They bill us up to the benefit amount. In some cases, it might be a smaller benefit. It might be just enough to get a minimum delivery. So the benefits vary depending on the income and the household size and those sorts of things. So the benefit letters go out. We continue taking applications right through April. That's important too. I think sometimes folks feel if they don't get in by a certain time, they can't. But we will take applications from mid-July right through the end of April. And each week we mail out notification letters as people get enrolled. If someone's denied, sometimes they're denied for being a little bit over income. It's really important that people know they can reapply, particularly if their income fluctuates. They might have, a couple of pay stubs with some overtime, but that might not be a normal thing for them. They can always come back in another 30-day period and try again. We certainly don't want anyone to feel as though they can only come in once. If someone is denied for not providing the documentation that we need, again, they can always reapply and try again. It's a pretty simple application process. The appointment itself usually takes about 20 minutes. You meet individually in a private office with one of our intake staff. We also have evening hours, one night a month in both counties, for the folks who are working, who have a hard time, especially if it's out of town. Even trying to come in on your lunch break can be really challenging. We also do outreach sites. We have sites in Jaffrey, Winchester, Allstead, Walpole, Troy. We try to get out to the smaller towns, and usually it's at the same place every year so people get used to it, and that's a lot of the time it's for folks with transportation issues. So we try to do what we can to get out there and try to accommodate people as best we can.
Now, I mentioned at the top of the show that there's probably not a unique profile to this. My guess is that you probably see young working people who are just struggling to make ends meet. You may see senior citizens.
Yes.
Certainly families. So you would encourage anybody who thinks and to not even question whether they may be eligible. Let you help them figure that out.
Exactly.
And part of the reason for that is if they're not eligible for that fuel assistance, I know you have a great referral network, and you can work with them on perhaps other resources. And SCS, of course, itself has some internal resources that can assist people.
And a perfect example of that actually is the United Way funding that we receive. We have a program that we refer to as the Warm Dollars Fund, and that's really specifically designed to assist folks who do not fall into our regular eligibility criteria, but are able to document the need. One group that really comes to mind for that are folks who have income and they hover maybe just a couple $100s over the income guidelines, but clearly once they pay the mortgage, the car payment, the child care, there's no money left for heating expenses. So that is a particular group that we see. Also for elderly on fixed income, Social Security, maybe a small pension, and that small pension might just put them a little bit over, and they might be okay except for that last delivery of the season where they've just depleted their funds. The Warm Dollars Fund is a huge resource that really would not exist if it wasn't for the United Way. And that really helps us to fill in in the gaps. We have another program called the Senior Energy Assistance Program, and toward the end of the year, what we do is we look through our denied households that are elderly, that live on a fixed income, who again may have just been a little over income, and we're able to qualify some of them for a minimum benefit. We also have connected with Citizens Energy, Joe for Oil, and that's a national program where actually Southwestern Community Services is the statewide contact for that program. And we can sometimes connect people to that for an additional 100 gallons of fuel. So there are reasons to apply even if you're just not sure, just to see if there's any help we can offer you. And if we can't do anything, sometimes we can still do a food box, within the agency, refer you to one of our other departments, Housing Stabilization with their homeless prevention program. So it's really worth it to get connected if you're struggling. And I think leaving it at that, if you're struggling, connect to us because we might be able to help you. And if we can, we're going to make sure we do.
It's interesting because some of the data that we've begun to collect, and you're part of that, but some of our basic needs services, and really this falls within those basic needs. But for example, when people may be receiving food assistance, we're finding that they shift that over into their utilities primarily, or their rent, but they're using it for other basic needs. So, when you talk about people struggling, this may be the help they need to be able to make other ends meet in other places. And so really getting out there and just asking.
Right, and keeping the household stable, preventing a small issue from snowballing out of control, reducing the stress in the household, which can have an effect on the kids and can have an effect on the relationship between there's so many things that are affected when you can't make ends meet no matter how hard you try, and it can affect other things in your life. So what we're trying to do is assist with the immediate need, but also try to play a part in stabilizing that household so they feel like they can start to move forward and that perhaps things will start to change for them.
It's so critical. We had Healthy Monadnock on the show last week, and when you really think about people's well-being, if you're not feeling stable, you're not feeling safe, it's very difficult to think about your own well-being and to ensure your own well-being, more importantly, because we all know that stress leads to reduced sleep and heart issues, and it involves health issues. So it's so important.
Right. And I think it's tough for someone who's had a situation where their furnace just died and they have no heat and the temperatures have just kind of dropped out. When they hear someone who might say, you really need to take care of yourself, they're probably thinking, yeah, I know, I'd love to, but I've got some really huge things right in front of me right now that I need to deal with. And so what we try to do is remove some of those crises so that they can kind of focus on moving forward.
Now, you have another program in addition to the fuel assistance piece called weatherization.
Yes.
So can you tell us about that?
Sure. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this as well. Thank you. Weatherization is a program that's a little quieter. A lot of people may not be as aware of it, but it's really the other side of the same coin for us with fuel assistance. The way to access the weatherization program is through the fuel assistance application, and the program is really designed to just help reduce the energy costs to a household, help them reduce their usage in terms of electricity or their usage in terms of their fuel, particularly the deliverable fuels. And the way we do that is by just trying to tighten up the house. And we usually can help between the different sources, the Weatherization Department of Energy. We have a home heating repair and replacement program. We have a little bit of work that we're able to do with the utilities, which is wonderful. And then again, the United Way funding that we receive. we can usually help somewhere around 50 households a year with that program. And part of the reason the number's a lot lower than fuel is because the individual job costs are much higher. We go in and we'll do a blower door test to see where the household is really losing their energy, where the leaks are, and where we should be focusing our attention. And then we might go in and do some duct sealing. We might do, we almost certainly will do some insulating. We do a lot around, windows, all kinds of things. We've occasionally been able to either help with a roof or be able to refer for help with a roof. There's all kinds of things that we can do. We come up with a work order, and then we work with local contractors so that we can get the work completed, and then they bill us for that work. And that program has been immensely helpful, because then if someone is receiving a fuel assistance benefit, that dollar goes further. It also gives us a chance to talk with folks about energy conservation, and it's a really, really important program, but the funding is very low at this time in the state of New Hampshire and throughout the country for the weatherization services. But again, when someone comes in and applies for fuel, they should let their intake worker know that they're interested in weatherization, and we can at least have an energy auditor go out and take a look at their property.
Now, that would be if they're the homeowner.
If they're the homeowner. Yeah.
And people are eligible for the fuel assistance if they're a renter.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
So not for the weatherization program, but they are for the fuel assistance.
And we can occasionally help with weatherizing a multi-unit apartment building. There are quite a few contingencies to that. One is that the individuals who are residing in the home have to be considered low income and meet the income eligibility. But also we have to have quite a bit of communication and understanding with the landlord. There's a lot of paperwork involved. Things like, if we're going to do these energy efficiency installments, that you're not going to then evict your tenant and get someone else in there. But one of the things that we've explained to people is nothing we do is for aesthetics. It's increasing the energy efficiency of the building, which in turn helps the tenant, but we're not sprucing up the property, which then allows the landlord to seek, a different tenant. It's not that kind of a thing. So it's still designed to benefit the tenant.
So interesting. Now, you mentioned that you get about 6,000 applications for the fuel assistance. Most of those are fulfilled, it sounds like. About 50 for the weatherization program. When people don't meet the income guidelines for that, you really work and explore other options with them. And I know one of the services you're doing, because we're working with you on this, but you're assessing people's financial well-being and really trying to empower them around their own financial health. And I say that that it's financial empowerment because you're not telling them how they should be spending their money. It's really about helping them understand how they want to use their money and achieve their goals in life. So I just want to kind of put that in there, because you are, Southwestern is doing such an amazing job with that whole piece, and really taking the opportunity when you're doing those fuel assistance intakes to have those conversations with people.
Absolutely. The financial literacy and empowerment work that's done, it's really almost a curriculum at this point, which really touches on a lot of different things, a lot of different topics, but all having to do with financial empowerment. Everything from building credit and opening a bank account to how to kind of negotiate when it comes to back due bills, budgeting, basic budgeting, budgeting for what you have now, future forecasting. There's all kinds of things, how to kind of cut back on some bills, prioritizing. There's all kinds of things involved. It's a pretty neat program. We also pair with housing stabilization for their work skills, life skills, workshop, which again, healthy relationships, nutrition, work ethic, there's all kinds of things, Tenancy 101. There's a lot of, and that's where Southwestern Community Services, I think, is always kind of operating on two tracks at once. There's always that immediate emergency need, let's alleviate that. But the other track is always trying to keep an eye on the idea of long-term self-sufficiency. So fuel assistance is a good example of a program that's kind of operating on both tracks at once. Okay, this person needs heat. Their pipes are going to freeze. The kids can't stay there if they do not get a fuel delivery today. That's alleviating an immediate need. But we notice this household has come in as an emergency every year for the past 3 years. Let's connect them to the financial literacy workshop. Let's see what else they might need. How much fuel are they using anyways? It just allows us to kind of take one further step, and that's kind of on that self-sufficiency track.
Do you find that most people are fuel conscious now that you really work with?
Yeah, I do. I think it's actually amazing. I remember I used to work for a program years ago as a case manager, and one of the questions I was required to ask was, do you feel you need help budgeting your money? And one of the responses I got is there really just isn't a lot of money to budget. I'm actually amazed at how far people can stretch a dollar, and how they really do everything they can to make the most of the situation that they're in. It's eye-opening. It's eye-opening. Sometimes I see some of the single parents that come in. They might have 3 kids. They're working full-time. They know where to go to get a deal on this and where to go to. They've really, it's like, I feel like I could take a lesson from them on how to be savvy, with my money. I think that when you don't have much, you make the most of what you have. And again, our programs are just designed to try to supplement what they're already working hard to do.
And great programs they are. Now, so people have the option of coming to you for that fuel assistance, that weatherization piece. And then housing stabilization, there's lots of other programs there. But you also work with area initiatives. I know we've collected coats, for example. The corporations have been wonderful at donating coats. Timken in particular has done a lot around that. And really getting those out to folks through some of your programs. So there's lots of options for people. And again, no age limits.
No.
I want to profile a little bit our senior population.
Okay.
Because I'm guessing that may be a population, because it's growing, that you're seeing more and more of, because they're on fixed incomes.
Absolutely.
Is fuel assistance a challenge for them? Or fuel, I should say.
Yeah, it is. I think that it's really, really tough. I think to myself, if I got to a point where things got really tough, could I run out and could I get a part-time job, or could I? It's so different when you're elderly, especially frail elderly, and you are living on a fixed income. And when I see elderly households that are still carrying a mortgage on their property, that's even worse. I don't know how they're doing it. It's really, really, really tough. But it was interesting when you said, is it the fuel assistance tough for them? Because you were actually right on that point as well. It's tough sometimes to get some of our elderly households to apply for fuel assistance. Even though they desperately need it. So anytime we can get the word out, and the Keene Senior Center is amazing. They always invite us to their gathering that they do every spring and in the summer. Anything we can do to get the word out to our senior households is really, really important. It's also a challenge when we're trying to track usage for them for weatherization purposes, because so often they are so frugal with the heat and the temperature that they actually keep their temperature and their thermostat lower than it probably should be. So the usage isn't even really reflecting the true need. It's just reflecting how they've made do, especially Yankee, good old Yankee stock. We make do with what we have. So yes, if anyone has any elderly folks in their lives, whether it be a grandparent or a neighbor, anyone at all, and you see that they may possibly be struggling, they should absolutely be encouraged to apply for this program.
It's interesting that you say that, because we have a 91-year-old former neighbor who's been living with us since July, and she's staying with us for a while. And she's beginning to, I noticed, bundle up a lot more, put on a little bit heavier clothes, just went out and bought a corduroy shirt because she was feeling a little chilled. And I was thinking to myself, wow, we get sort of in our places in our lives, and we're frugal with our heat,
Right.
and because you have to be in so many ways now. And we keep it at a certain temperature. I like it at about 64 to 68. My husband would keep it at 72 to 78 if he could. But I was thinking about her being with us the other day, and I was thinking, I wonder if she needs the heat on now, in the evenings when there's that chill in the air.
Right.
And she's being great. She asked us for an extra pair of socks to be able to keep her feet warm.
Right.
And but you really do have to think about neighbor to neighbor too, and friend to friend, and
Right.
family member to family member, because sometimes people just don't share this.
Right, absolutely. That's absolutely true. And that's difficult. Sometimes we'll do presentations with the United Way at some of our local companies that are just amazing. And we're really doing it from a, with the workers, if you're able to give, and they do, and they love to, and that's great. But I always wonder when I'm giving my presentation how many people in the room also would like to be able to contact me if they needed help, and that just wouldn't be the setting to do it in. So I always try to throw in a little piece about that, just so that whoever's in the room who's kind of looking at me for a different reason knows that there's a way that they can access the program, and it doesn't have to be public. They can do it very quietly and just kind of scoot in, or we can meet them or whatever. It is tough. Sometimes it's tough to get folks to ask for help.
And if somebody wanted to ask for help, how are they going to reach out to you, Beth?
There's lots of ways. Anyone can call one of our main offices, the one in Keene, the 352-7512 number. They can also contact the Claremont office, especially for folks who are right on that line, like the Walpole, Westmoreland, Alstead area. Sometimes they may work north instead of south, so it might be easier for them to go to that office even though they're in this catchment area. And that phone number is 542-9528. But also any SCS staff can be contacted through email, and sometimes that's a nice way to just kind of put something out there to someone. And my email is bdaniels@scshelps.org, and we have that same ending for anyone at the agency. It's first initial, last name @scshelps.org. Our website is helpful because there are many applications, not fuel assistance, but other programs that they can access from our website, but also income guidelines, contact information, directions, all kinds of things. And our website is www.scshelps.org. And I would definitely encourage anyone to check that out as well. And also just walking in and just asking to talk with someone.
And you're located on Community Way here in Keene.
Yes.
So people can just walk into the office, and there's a front person there that'll help direct you. I think people may feel a little overwhelmed sometimes, thinking about, oh my gosh, I got to fill out all these forms. But you're there to help them do that. That shouldn't prevent people from reaching out to you, feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to meet the income guidelines, or I don't know how to fill out the forms. And sometimes when people are overwhelmed by thinking about that, they just won't do it. So, I think an important message is that just reach out. Do not be afraid to. You don't have to worry about the paperwork. You
Right.
don't have to worry about all these things. You will help walk them through each of the steps. And it really sounds like you try to make it as simple as possible for them and as accessible as possible for them.
Right, right. And we do consider ourselves to be, stewards of the federal funding and stewards of the United Way funding. And so the questions that we ask and the documentation that we ask for, it's our way of just making sure that we are doing everything we're supposed to be doing to make sure that we're crossing our T's. But the other side of that is making sure that no one falls through the cracks. So the easiest way to do it is, if you are struggling, contact us. If we can help you, we absolutely will. And if we can't, we can usually direct you to something else. A good example, there are times we can assist with weatherization. We have a 1,200 household wait list that's constantly reprioritized. But we might have a household that their oil tank is leaking. We can at least refer them, a direct referral, to the Safe Tank program in Concord to get their oil tank replaced in a safe way. That would be something where we would still consider that a win, because at least we were able to provide them with something. And then we can look at whether or not they would then qualify for weatherization. So there's a lot of different ways we can either help directly or at least refer them where they need to go first, if we can't do that. But we never want anyone to walk away feeling as though that was a waste of my time.
And can people who may be concerned about someone they care about or someone that they love, a family member, and can see they're struggling but maybe recognize that they're going to be too embarrassed to reach out, is there a way for them to somehow connect them to you?
Anyone with those kinds of situations is welcome to reach out to me, and what I could then do is send a letter just introducing myself, really, just that we're doing some outreach and that we'd like to see whether or not they'd like to talk about any assistance. And if that household is one that we're already working with, we would simply tell the concerned person, thank you so much, we'll follow up on this, because it's confidentiality, but we would certainly follow up either way.
So, it doesn't, that's an opportunity to do a little neighborly work and or familial work, really taking care of your loved ones. And I think about particularly the elders in our lives who are very proud, and you mentioned the proud Yankees, and oftentimes won't reach out for help. So here's an opportunity for you perhaps to quietly but directly be able to provide some kind of support and assistance through the program, through the fuel assistance or weatherization. Quite a waiting list on weatherization.
Yeah.
I'm sure our audience would be concerned hearing that there's that type of need, 1,600 or 1,200 people on the waiting list, 1,200, and you can do 50 a year. It really speaks to why we need to come together as a community and be good advocates, be givers, be supporters, and perhaps to even volunteer at times for some of the work that goes on. I know the weatherization can't use volunteers because it's primarily very focused in direct work around the weatherization and requires a contractor.
But you're absolutely right, because there's all kinds of things that we don't normally do that we know a household would love to receive some assistance with, and that would be something where we could connect them to a volunteer, and that would be wonderful.
And I watched this last week on last Friday with the Day of Caring, the Veteran Summit, and Stand Down, and the RSVP National Day of Caring, and what a great day. Over 100 people out volunteering across the region serving multiple types of households, and a lot of it was around preparing people for the winter months.
Yeah.
Making sure the windows are sealed, or even that their gardens were ready, and that their their property was taken care of in such a way that it makes it safe for them going into the winter. Their walkways are clear and things. I think the other part of it is thinking about that in terms of people who we may not think really need either a service like this or that kind of volunteer support that we're talking about. And lots of times that may be the person who's just not feeling well and isn't able to get to work, or possibly is out of the workforce now and is frail. But just needs that kind of support. So don't, I think part of what I would say to you is don't be blind to your neighbor. Make sure you know who they are. Do those little welfare checks, because you can reach out to Beth on their behalf and do it confidentially. So really, what a neat program, Beth. It provides, I think, about 6,000 people in our region receiving fuel assistance and being kept warm through the winter months or the cold months. Fall's not exactly warm around here either.
In New England, we have a lot of old housing stock. So, you have some families that, and I've done home visits where you can hear the wind coming through. You can see things moving. It's not these old rickety, they've just been hundreds of years old. And I know some areas of the country are similar, but New England's unique in that way, that I think we so much of our housing stock is old. Or we also have a lot of folks who live in mobile homes. And mobile homes are very, very difficult to keep warm in the wintertime, particularly if the belly of the mobile home isn't properly insulated. So there are two extremes, mobile homes and old housing stock, but they both play to the same problem, which is folks not being able to stay warm.
And that's what you're all about, keeping people warm, and keeping people connected and safe in their communities. Any other things that you want people to be aware of? Are there any fundraisers going on where people can assist? Any opportunities to really do some advocacy, both maybe at the local level, but it sounds like at the federal level that we're continuing to get some cuts to this type of program. That's frightening for me to hear when you think about it being such a basic need to be warm, and especially in an environment that can be harsh like ours. What's people's opportunity to really speak up about this?
I think anytime someone is able to understand, we've all had those days where we're outside and it's freezing cold to the point where our hands kind of feel numb, our fingers feel numb. And that moment when you walk into your house and you just kind of unthaw, you just go, oh. Imagine if that moment didn't come. You know what I mean? And you're just sitting there and it's not getting any warmer at all. Anybody who wanted to make a donation to the fuel assistance program, 100% of the donated money, 100% of the warm dollars money go to direct assistance. None of it is in any way used for administrative or salary, none of that stuff. It's 100% used to help people with their minimum deliveries, preventing disconnects, all of those types of things. So if anyone ever wanted to make a private donation, it's so appreciated and so needed. And also just any conversations, any way to build awareness around the fact that the weatherization program absolutely could benefit from additional funding or additional collaboration even. Anything like that would be helpful.
So really an opportunity for people to give, some opportunity for them to volunteer, and certainly to be advocates as well. Any last thoughts you gave such a great example there. You sort of sent a chill up my spine, honestly, because I can think of that feeling, and I hope you can out there, audience. Think about that day when you've been outdoors, whether it's out shoveling or just walking, and you get out and you walk back in your house, and that feeling when you hit that warmth, or that feeling when you get in your car and it's warm. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that some folks without this type of assistance may have only their vehicles, and if they don't have transportation to provide that warmth, they are living in very cold environments and oftentimes just bundling up. We've been through some rough weather here in the Monadnock region, and I'm sure many of you can remember going without heat for a couple of days and what that feels like. So imagine going through the whole winter feeling that way. Such an incredible program. We're so thankful that you're here in the Monadnock region.
And really, I mean this 100% sincerely. Without the United Way, it would be very, very difficult to do what we do. That Warm Dollars Fund closes the gap in so many situations that really make it possible to do what we do. It's incredible. It's really incredible.
And again, we want to remind you, public, that don't be afraid to ask, that this is a program. It could be for you, it may not be, but you could be connected to other resources that are out there. But you will not know that unless you ask, and there's nothing wrong with asking. And if you see someone out there who's afraid to ask that question, please contact Beth Daniels at Southwest Community Services. Or if you need to know how to reach Southwest Community Services and can't remember the information Beth gave, and I'm going to have her give it again, call 211. Call 211 and tell them that you have someone or you need some fuel assistance, and they will connect you directly to Southwest Community Services. So Beth, again, how would people reach out to you? You're taking applications, it sounds like, right now for the fuel assistance program.
Yes, we've taken about 1,500 applications so far, but anyone can contact the Keene office, which is located at 63 Community Way. That's right off Water Street. The office number is 352-7512, and you can also email any member of the team, myself included, bdaniels@scshelps.org.
And you can also contact the United Way if you need this information, or again, dial 211 and request fuel assistance help or weatherization help. Beth, I want to thank you for the great work that Southwest Community Services does out there and that you do. I know you're passionate about this. I've seen it for a long time here. And we're, like I said, we're just thankful that there's great programs like this, and the Southwestern Community Services offers this, connects people to this, and that you're there.
Thank you.
So, audience, if you need a fuel assistance, if you need weatherization, contact Beth Daniels at Southwestern Community Services. They're taking applications right now as we speak. This is your opportunity to perhaps get the little bit of extra help that you may need. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to encourage you to get out there and be an advocate for keeping people safe and warm through the cold months. And I want to remind you to live united by giving, volunteering, and advocating.